Welcome, everybody, officially to the Finding Hermes Spirituality Praxis and Healing Group. I hope everybody's doing well if you're here live or if you're hearing the recording, whether it's on Patreon or later on with the general public. And today for our November show, I'm very excited to have back a guest who was on Aeon Byte not too long ago, and that is Cyrus Ryan. And he will be discussing his new book and some of the exercises there. We'll make it experiential. But Cyrus, thank you very much for coming back on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I really looked forward to it. And I really enjoyed our last conversation. It was exactly almost 1 year ago.
Hmm.
Time just zips by.
It does. It
Yeah.
does. Yeah, yeah. Cronus is not merciful. He,
No,
he keeps things going. So,
I know.
yeah, let's start with your book. Tell us about your new book and what is it about?
My new book is Esoteric Writing. Sort of hold it up there.
Hmm.
And compared to my other book, this is a large book. It's 300 and some odd pages. And it involves, I call it esoteric writing teaching for the Aquarian age. It's breaking new ground on what's called the group work, more an Aquarian idea versus the Piscean spiritual path, where the individual makes their efforts. They may or may not have a teacher, but you basically do your spiritual effort on your own, studying, meditating, what have you. The Aquarian method, which started to come out in the 1920s, 30s, but really gained a bit of ground in the 50s, 60s, and much more now, is working with a group of people following the same meditation, studying the same books, creating a dynamic vortex of energy, learning how to invoke higher forces. An individual who tries to invoke a force, it's not easy unless you have certain past abilities from a past life. But if you get a group together and over trial and error and time, the opportunity to invoke higher forces is much greater. Thus, it accelerates one's spiritual progress. It also helps with greater inspiration and insights. Being theosophy based, not theosophical society, but theosophy knowledge, which is basically more an occult or esoteric from the blending of the Sanatana Dharma of ancient India Brahmanism and the Vajrayana of Buddhism, blending it in a more synthetic expression that is more, to use a Buddhist term, called the pith, going to the essence of the knowledge. If you look at some Buddhist books, you could just read, there's just so much stuff. Same with the Indian community. You go on and on and on, but to focus and get to the essence. So the book that I've written, Esoteric Writings, has to do with my 50 years of group work, first with my teacher who passed away uh, 11 years ago, and then continuing with this new group, which we've been going about 6 years. We're a small group of only 9 people who have penetrated beyond what I call the secret door. My teacher had also, but he always said, we've gone too far. When you go too far, there are certain things that are not allowable to be talked about. You can't say, how do you say, go into certain practices that are so esoteric, they have to be kept, and there's a law actually regarding this, kept within the ashram. But I've put together this book and with short chapters, basing it on this Sanatana Dharma and Vajrayana, giving insights into the group work and what individuals can do themselves. A lot of the focus, there's probably quite a number of chapters on meditation based on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. There are many translations for that book, but there was one done in the 50s by a theosophist. There were a lot of theosophists that did translations, but this gentleman practiced. I believe he was a yogi. And you can really look at these Yoga Sutras as probably the first self-help book on spiritual development ever. It could be more than 2,000 years old. There's a lot of scholarly discussion as when the Patanjali existed. There is a temple. It's interesting. I was in South India a long time ago, pardon me, in Chidambaram, South India. There's this huge temple. It's probably bigger than your average football field with all the seating and everything. But inside this ancient temple is another ancient temple. And supposedly, they don't know the date. It's much smaller in the core.
Wow.
And they think it's at the time of Patanjali. It's interesting, many of the great beings that people read about in history come from South India, like Bodhidharma, who supposedly started Shaolin, South India. Padmasambhava, though the Tibetans give all this mythical stories about him, South India, they're Indian, and Padmasambhava. So this book is written in what's called sutras, very short pith ideas. For instance, the second sutra is Chitta Vritti, uh, pardon me, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. 4 words. But you penetrate into those 4 words, which means that yoga or union is achieved by the stilling of the modifications of the mind so it becomes reflective of the reality. And then the 4 books of the Yoga Sutras are based on that sutra. And in the Yoga Sutras, and it's not easy to understand, but time me, he makes very good commentaries, which gives some idea that he's practiced in much greater depth, and I've read quite a number of them. And he uses a lot of diagrams that give insights into meditational experiences. And in the book, there's what's called the Astanga Yoga, or the 8 limbs of yoga. And I talk all about this in my book in a lot of detail. Short detail, though. That the Astanga Yoga, there are the 4 outer yogas and the 4 inner yogas. In my book, I concentrate on the 4 inner yogas, which are pratyahara, which means withdrawing your consciousness to an inner point of focus, that the external senses are no longer active. You've detached, separated from them. And then there's dharana, and I'll go over this with a diagram in a little while. Dharana, which is yogic concentration, is different than ordinary concentration. And Taimni gives a very good diagram explaining this. And then after you achieve dharana, which is like a relationship is achieved with what you're meditating on, to dhyana, which is real meditation. There's a type of union with what you're focused on. Could be a Buddha, it could be a tree. Doesn't matter what you want to know. You know, in oh, if you watch so many esoteric or occult, whether it be even television programs, and they're wondering how these ancient people had such knowledge, say, about the Earth and its circumference, its relationship to the other planets, and how they had this knowledge. They achieved deep dhyana and communicated and saw, and they had their own innate knowledge. They didn't need instruments, they were the instrument. And then after dhyana is what's called samadhi. And samadhi has many degrees when you enter into different worlds. That's very difficult, but there are a few beings, and in literature, in Indian literature, there's, for instance, Ramakrishna, who lived in the late 19th century in Bengal. He achieved what's called the level of samyama, which he could do all those 4 degrees in an instant. So many times he was in an ecstatic state of samadhi. And there are many others in history, especially in India, uh, China, some of the Zen masters like Bodhidharma or Shu Yun, etc. So that's the topic, part of the topic in my book. The other thing has to do with in order to accelerate your achievement or inner awakening, one has to get help. If anybody's read, and I always like the analogy, The Fourth Way of the Gurdjieff Uspensky.
Right. Hmm.
If you're in prison and you want to escape, it's not almost impossible on your own. But if you have several others that are helping you, one to time the guards movement, one to figure out the locks and the combination, another one to get materials, and then you pool your energy together, then the opportunity is much greater. But you need one more thing that's really important. Somebody outside the wall who knows what's going on, who can help and knows what goes on inside the wall and can provide the escape car or what have you. So the analogy is you need to have some contact with a higher intelligence that has already achieved what you're working towards, and they can offer or help with guidance. Thus, through Theosophy, there was the idea of the masters of wisdom, the enlightened Sangha, whether you want to be a Buddhist Sangha or the Hindu enlightenment, or using the Hermetic term, the pardon me, the golden chain of Hermes, to follow in the footsteps of those and connect with them so you become part of the chain and get not climb up, part of it is pulled up. Because as these beings are making progress, somebody has to fill their spot, so to speak. And through a group work, the opportunity is greater. Not easier, but the opportunity may be greater. And there are certain qualities or necessities. One, someone in the group has to have a karmic link from past lives somewhere with one of these beings in order that the connection can be reinstated. And then you have the golden chain of Hermes. In Hinduism, they call it the Guru Parampara, or in the Vajrayana, the whispered lineage. It's all oral, and generally it has to be personal. But things are changing now with the internet. And in my book, I talk about some of the connections that we've uh, had the experiences of. I'll tell one or two stories, if that's okay.
Sure.
My wife is very psychic, amazingly psychic. But anyways, being psychic, you're sensitive. And we were in the Valley of the Kings in Egypt, and something happened to her. We got back to the hotel. We were in Thebes, or Luxor as it is today, and she was erratic. All of a sudden, she got up we had a suite, bedroom, living room, etc. We opened the curtains, you see the pyramids right in front of you. Amazing place. Anyways, she wanted to run out of the hotel suite. What are you doing? I'm leaving. What do you mean? Going where? With what? No purse. Something. She says, something's hitting me. I don't know what's
Mm,
going on. I got her to sit down and I started to focus. So I called a particular master. It was the master, he's known as Kuthumi. He came instantly, but he said, I can't help you. But there's an Egyptian master here who can. He came, and my wife immediately laid down, and she said she felt like as if this being put his hand like a vacuum cleaner and sucked this negative force that had entered her out. And then she, like a occult operation, she was exhausted and had to sleep. And then when she woke up, she was normal. It's a very strange, uh, how do you call it, experience. Another one, I mentioned that I was in Mount Shasta. Uh, I think it's in the book. So we were in Manchester for our honeymoon. My wife really wanted to go somewhere else, but I had a feeling to go to Mount Shasta. And we had rented a really nice cottage. And it so happened it was during Wesak. We got married just before Wesak, which, if you know, in the Buddhist tradition, that's when the Buddha, for a few minutes, returns to Earth during the Wesak period, full moon in Taurus. So we're meditating, and then my wife stopped. We're doing our Wesak meditation. She stops me. She said, outside, there are hundreds of indigenous people, and they're not happy.
mm,
I said, these are from the past, right? Yeah, they're an imprint, but they're still active and alive.
mm.
So I said, can they enter? No. Oh, so let's continue meditating. So we continue meditating. Then she stops. She says, one is entering. Yeah.
Wow.
Because I can't see, I can feel sometimes. Sometimes I see things, but not like my wife. So he's coming to me and he's asking what we're doing. And she explains to him that we're Buddhist. I use that line. I'm more of an occultist, but Buddhism is so benign. And we're chanting to the Buddha and we're working for world peace and the betterment of humanity. I should take a step back. Uh, the beings, he was telling my wife that we are creating a force that's creating a disturbance. And that's why all these indigenous people who are imprinted and still exist in the astral have come.
Mm,
So I said, ooh, must be a strong meditation. Anyway, she said, I've reassured him and he's leaving and we're okay. Then I could feel this being was not one of these uh, indigenous people, but he was the guardian of Mount Shasta,
mm.
a great being of some sort that keeps the mystical thing. Because you notice around Mount Shasta, there aren't any, and I know they've tried, I read, like resorts or anything. It's kept very natural. They wanted to create ski resorts up there once, and I think these maybe a being like this helped to inspire or prevent it. So my book has experiences like that. Also, a chapter by my wife, and she wrote. past lives and people I wish I could get away from, or I can't get away from. I forget the title, and how they recur in your life. And she goes through a bunch of her and people in the group and how we're linked from ancient India, Egypt. My wife and I were actually in an occult school in today what's called Afghanistan, but it was Buddhist
Mm,
several thousand years or 2,000 years
right.
ago, something like. So my book has a lot of that in it, plus the meditation and then guiding ideas for the group work, working with a group of people. And I have a small thing on time and dimension. That's one of my things that I really enjoy talking about. That time, past, present doesn't exist, and future all are one time,
Mm,
and that the past still exists. So for my wife, because of her occult clairvoyance, not so much psychic, the past is constantly present.
mm,
Another example, not in the book, we went on a vacation not far from Toronto. There's a small city called Kingston that used to be a British military fort in 1812. And she could still see the redcoats marching through the city.
wow.
They're still there.
It's still there in the
Yeah.
loop.
Oh, there's one other story. Does anybody live close to San Diego?
I don't think
Not
so.
very.
No.
Okay. We were in San Diego. I think it was my 65th birthday. She took me there. And we decided to go for Mexican food to get really good Mexican food. And first, she saw this ad for the most haunted house in the United States.
Hmm.
So we went, paid, it was only five or some, it was very inexpensive. She was really disappointed. She says, oh, like two ghosts. It was nothing. So we leave and go to this restaurant, walkable from this, uh, what have you, this haunted house. Beautiful Mexican restaurant, great ambience, great food. When we go, it's the sun is setting. So we eat and when we come out, it's very dark, but it's lighted. But then this force hits both of us, like as if it's coming down, pressing on our head. Huge. And I'm starting to focus to battle it. And she says, don't. This is much greater than you think. But it's so uncomfortable. It's impacting on our bodies. We run to our car, get in, and speed away, wondering what the is it? Did a little research on that area. It had been reclaimed a lot of land. It was closer to the ocean. It was a port. There were a lot of hangings there.
Mm.
All
Oh
these
boy.
negative spirits were still functioning.
Wow.
So I got stuff like that in my book too.
Wow. Yeah, really. Thanks for sharing. And I think it's incredible that you mention Hutumi because Elvis Presley in my book,
Yeah.
oh, he always thought he was the reincarnation of him. So he was very he thought he might be it, but who knows? Yes, and of course, I don't want to take up questions. Do you guys have any questions? Your chance to be the host with the most. No questions. Theosophy, Hinduism. I like in your book, Cyrus, you do talk about microwave spirituality. You weren't a. What is microwave spirituality?
It's so popular today. How often do you see ads come for an enlightenment intensive? It's all you need. After this weekend, you too will be enlightened. So the idea is if the spiritual path can be achieved quickly. People want to buy methodologies that they think will rush them forward and they can achieve Kundalini, awakening, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
extremely quickly. They're looking for they don't want to put the ingredients all together that you need in a meal. They don't want to chop all the ingredients, get the spices. They just want to open a package, throw it in, press a couple of buttons, wait a
Yeah.
minute, and it's all there. And that is very common with so many. The path and the esoteric or occult knowledge of the ancient wisdom has not changed. Thus, it's called the ageless wisdom. It's ageless. What changes is one's approach, but the rules and the laws are the same.
Mm,
The other difference is because in our society and the age we live in, we have more intelligence. We've through our educations, we're more literate. So the knowledge aspect is is greater. So we can get deeper insights and study more. Where in the past, uh, they moved more towards, like in Zen, like the will aspect, or in India, the bhakti, the surrender aspect.
mhm,
In in the West, to surrender and to be a devotee is really difficult. A lot of it is just fake sentimentality, you know? And many, like, I don't know if you have, well, I'm a lot older, but in the 70s, and they still have the Hare Krishna, and they'd be running up and down the streets in
right.
downtown Toronto. And if you read the history of Prabhupada, their the founder, and the people that were all gathered, he brought together people who were in past lives Hindus. So for them, they could follow on the way of bhakti, but they didn't penetrate very deeply because being in a Caucasian body, it's hard.
Mhm,
We just not made that. We have to think, we have to understand. But as it says in The Voice of the Silence, which is one of the best books of Blavatsky, the mind is the slayer of the real.
mm,
With microwave spirituality, a lot of people will read an occult book, not good book, whatever. But because they read it and understand it intellectually, they think they know it. And that's when the mind becomes a trickster,
mm,
thinking they know. And that's why humility, surrender are still very important. And therefore, a teacher is helpful because then you say, I don't know, please help me. And you're being humble. And through that humility, you become open, and that essential nature, that spark of divinity, can grow. That's the big difference is that we are all born with this potential, but it gets covered up by our personalities. It This spark needs special food to awaken. Ordinary food doesn't do it.
that
Uh,
makes sense. But I guess my question then would be, yes, India and these places are known for their sadhus and gurus and great masters, but they're also known for a lot of scammers and false prophets, and history is littered with them. How do you tell the difference? Or when should your red flags come up? Or
that's
give me
not
$100, all of you right now, and I
so.
will
For
save you.
instance, I guess you've all heard of Osho.
Osho, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So
Rashnish.
back in, I met him in
Mm,
Patna, I forget, outside of Bombay, Mumbai, in 1977. Uh, my teacher suggested when I go to India, go see this guy, see what he is. I was really curious. And I went to what they call an afternoon satsang.
mm,
And you come there and you're sitting outside on the lawn. There's all these people, but there's a white chair. And he comes out in these flowing white robes and sits down. And right away, I feel Hollywood. This guy's a showman. He can't be real. And he's not.
mm,
One way that's helpful I'm sure most of you have read Yogananda, maybe Autobi Take
Yeah.
a picture of Oso and put it side by side with Yogananda. You'll see his picture is dark. He's pulling inwards, self-centered. But if you look at Yogananda, his picture radiates. And what I was surprised, I went then not long after to Bodh Gaya, I think, anyways, where the Buddha had his enlightenment. And I stayed at a Burmese vihara. Um, and there were all these guys in reddish robes, Western people. And they had these mullah beads. At the bottom of the mullah beads was a picture of Oso.
Mm.
And I started talking to them. They were educated. I ran into psychologists, psychiatrists, very educated people. And how can you follow this guy? So that's part of the path you have to go through. The Tibetan master who wrote through Alice Bailey called it the stage of Busiris, used the Greek term meaning the deceiver of souls.
Mm.
And in the story of Hercules, he got stuck for a period by this Busiris. And that happens to many. They get stuck in these Busiris. It's like in Colorado, you have the Shambhala meditation group left over from Chogyam Trungpa. He's one of those guys. I challenged him a long time ago, but he was better at words than I was. Sort of put me down really good. I was really embarrassed and felt really bad. But, he died at 34 at a very young age. And part of the reason I think he was destroying Buddhism and hurting it, and thus he was removed, higher forces. He was highly intelligent. I read his books, but it's interesting. I stayed at a monastery called Sami Ling in Scotland. Trungpa came there from Tibet with stayed with this Akon Rinpoche, but he started having affairs
Mm.
with students. Akon Rinpoche and the British Buddhist Society threw him out of England, but in the United States he became a hero. So
Only in America.
yeah, it's not easy. So knowledge is really important. Some of these guys have knowledge, some don't. Another guy, he's dead now, from Pennsylvania, Hindu, Swami Rama. By the time he was dying, there were so many suits against him. It was in the New York Times because of all the women he misused.
No.
And yet he had a beautiful ashram in the Poconos, huge place, followed all over North America. So I met him also, and he wanted to charge me $25 for an interview.
Mm.
And I asked him about the Master Decay and the Alice Bailey. Oh, that's garbage. You can say, well, it's difficult, I don't understand it, but to put something else down is incorrect. And then later I was at this place and this woman approached me, says, "Are you going to be leaving here soon?" I said, "Yeah. Can you help me? I want to escape."
Oh, wow.
It's like a prisoner. And I took her back to New York. I was going to New York to meet my teacher. He was working there for a while. So she told me a lot of weird stories. So there's all of this, but you're correct, Miguel. In India is the same. There are so many. There's very few. Uh, Even back in the day of Blavatsky in the Mahatma letters, Kutumi mentioned how disappointed he was at the spirituality in India at that time.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. I guess a Rolls-Royce fleet is out of the question for me, but I can still wait. It'll be Christmas time, so we'll see. But yeah, if unless somebody has a question, I can make you the host if you want to take over
Yes,
for the
yeah,
whiteboard
I think it's
I had a
great.
and or
question. Y-
meditation. Yeah, go ahead, Vince,
Yeah,
while I
just
do
real quick.
this.
What do you know about Kriyananda? What
So I
was?
met him. He was in California.
Yep.
He had an ashram in the Sierra Nevadas there. And it was a long time ago. I was living in San Francisco, 1983. I lived there for a year. I was working. And so I went for a Christmas, whatever. And fortunately, the weather was terrible. And I'm trying to remember because he made a lot of claims regarding his relationship with Yogananda.
Right.
I don't think they were true. He was a nice man, but he didn't give anything in deep teachings or anything. He was more relying on this image that he was supposedly in line with Yogananda. But the short time that I was there for a weekend, he didn't teach it. I was very disappointed. But that's all I can in my memory.
Okay. How about what do you think of Alan Watts?
He's a fake, highly intelligent. Uh, Again, a long time ago, I ran into, I forget, he went for Zen training initially, but couldn't do it. He quit after 2 weeks. But he had the memory and knowledge. And again, as I mentioned before, the mind is the slayer of the real. He could use his mind and manipulate words as many can, but he had no practice. His Zen teacher, I'd have to get up and look in my library because it's been a long time since I looked, but there was one Zen monk who came to the US very early on in the 50s or 60s. And then Alan Watts went to him for teaching. Anybody know any of those early Zen monks' name? It might
No.
trigger my memory. But in this book, it says that Alan Watts could not do the discipline. So if you want to teach Zen, you have to have some Zen practice, right? You have to have some understanding. Uh, there was another Zen teacher, and he practiced from Rochester. Uh, what was his name? He died quite a while back. The Three Pillars of Zen, I think he wrote, a couple other books. You could tell he practiced.
Suzuki?
And he is the Rochester Center. Pardon me?
Suzuki?
Phil, Philip Kapleau. And yes, the
Oh,
other guy is Suzuki. Suzuki was the early monk that came from Japan to California. And Alan Watts was learning through him
Mm.
and couldn't last. And the other guy from Rochester, who also was in the East, was Philip Kapleau. He was honest. When I spoke with him and told him a certain experience, he was blown away. He says, wow. So, anyways, you want to get to the whiteboard.
well, I
Yes,
have a
you're in
comment
control.
too.
I'm sorry?
I have a comment as well. I think the Gospel of Thomas resonates to what you're speaking of, and the software of it, and saying four, you have the image of nursing on the breast of the Holy Spirit of Sophia, and discarding the old man and the that type of thing. And then what it means is when you go to saying five, it speaks of if you meditate on whatever you meditate on in divine love, you can know.
Yes, but one has to find out what is divine love. What is love? Okay, especially in a spiritual aspect. Love is a force. It is not, most people take love as a sentimentality. Most people, uh, they hate if, even in a personal sense, if they have somebody gives them tough love. People want that love that pets your head. Oh, you're so nice. You're so good. I'm going to help. Doesn't that feel good? I care for you. I'm here for you. Right? But somebody does, if somebody's really sincere and says, well, you're blind, you don't see what you're doing. Take a good look, spend time, make effort. Okay, so
Hmm.
let's go to the whiteboard, and maybe we can also address what John's talking about in a
Sure,
different respect, because
sure.
it's not easy. You tell me
Mm.
when you're ready.
We're ready. You're in
Oh,
control. I've made you the host. You are the demiurge of this place
okay. So this is going to be based on the Yoga Sutras, and Miguel was interested in the concept of see the seer.
now. Hmm.
So let's see if this is working. So I'll use that as a title. And pardon my see the seer. This is an advanced state. So I'm going to just use a little bit of Sanskrit. I mentioned the four inner yogas, one called Pratyahara, and then which means to pull inwards, and then Dharana. Sanskrit really helps also, which is yogic concentration. And then dhyana, which is true, that's a D, which is true meditation. And then samadhi, samadhi, H-I. Samadhi is when you enter into different worlds. You actually pass through a membrane. So let's just say higher worlds. You actually pass through a membrane and enter into higher worlds, into another world. So through pratyahara, just very, very quickly, you have a soul which brings down life force to that part that's in every living being, but in a human, it's special. We call it the essential nature, and it's changed into prana or life force. This life force then goes out through the senses to the world. You have a certain amount of this life force, and then when it runs out, you die. Because it's always going out. Certain amount comes in, but because of the type of life we live, sometimes the soul, I'm not getting to, starts to get cut off. And these forces, especially when we get old, and then Alzheimer's sets in, various diseases set in, because the life force is being, let's use the term short circuited. In pratyahara, you want to grab this life force and pull it back into a center.
Hmm.
So when you're meditating, a lot of you will notice, or all people notice, that there are so many thoughts. Sometimes you can't stop them because these forces that are going outward don't want to be tampered with, and they run your mind. They make the thoughts flow. So let's have our little guy here. Oh, and Miguel, you can let me know if I'm running over or what have you.
Sure.
Oh, pardon my diagram. This is not going to be a good diagram. There's a little guy meditating. He's sitting in lotus posture.
It works.
Yeah. So when you meditate, meditation, like all other things, is based on the number three.
Mm.
Everything in life is actually based on number three. And if you look at philosophy, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, Kether, Bhima, Chakma in the Kabbalah, uh, Theosophy, first logos, second logos, third logos. Everything is based on these numbers, even electricity, positive and then a negative, but then you have a neutral. In order for the forces to flow, for creativity to flow, there's always three. Do we have any martial arts here? Martial artists?
Not for a long time. No.
Okay. And even if you're fighting somebody, it's based on the number three. When a punch comes to you, there's the punch is one, you recognizing it two, and three until you can counter it is three. That's why when the person can attack and surprise you, it's hard to counter. You get clocked. Therefore, you need to be trained. Anyways, everything is based, and if you can understand the relationship between these positive, oh, pardon me, that should be negative. Oh, I did it wrong. That should be the negative and neutral. I don't know what the sign for it. There's different motions between these positive, negative, and neutral that holds the key for action. Anyways, that's enough. So you're meditating. Let's say you're picturing a sun, like a radiant sun, and you created this picture of the sun in your mind. So you, as the seer, you have the object that you are seeing. But then there's the energy flow. There's the act of seeing. It's the positive, this is the negative, and this is the neutral. It's the act of seeing. So if you have many thoughts, it interferes with your visualization. I don't know, you can, and therefore, if you're trying to create the visualization, say the sun or a Buddha or Krishna or what have you, then this visualization does not stabilize or sit still. So pratyahara is learning how to pull in all your energies so that there is no interference, so that you can visualize, so that there's this flow and a relationship can be built between you, the seer, and the object. So in this act of seeing, there is a distance. So if you try it, and also just very quickly, I'm showing this on a two-dimensional plane. You may be trying to visualize in your heart or your head, but yet it'll appear as if there's a distance between you, the observer, the seer, and the object. When you reach into the next, and I'm going through this, Miguel, very quickly. So if I'm going too quickly, just ask a question. Trying to. When you reach Indrani, the distance shortens. The energy flow and the relationship with the object, the sun in this case, stabilizes. Then a very interesting thing happens. And it takes time. Normally, oh, I got to get rid of this little scribble that's thoughts. Normally, when you are first meditating, even if you're trying to focus in the heart, you're actually in your head. you have what's called observing eye that can observe things. It's part of the intellect. It has this intellect. It has this ability, intellect. But in your heart, so let's say you got your heart chakra here, the essential nature, that which you are born with, that is the divine, is here. Many times you think you're here, but in fact you're there. But when you can achieve dharana, this observing eye shifts more into the heart. This is not easy. It can take years. Then a strange thing happens. You can see in this direction and at the same time in that direction. Thus, you see the seer. You're seeing this way and that way simultaneously. Thus, you create a continuum, what they call chitta-kasha, the space within your mind. And then you start to see, to answer that age-old question of Hermes Trismegistus, who am I? You start to see who you are, the self. Through the seer, you start to touch the self. Up here, when you're up here, you cannot. It's only when you shift and reach into the state of dharana, and there's a relationship between you and the object of meditation. So see the seer is very advanced, but it's only the first step. The second is feel the feeler. That's when you start to feel your sentiency as an individuality within a totality, or your soul, which takes you to the higher plane. So soul. Pardon my scribble.
Oh, no worries. We can see.
Okay. So I go through this in my book in several ways and go even deeper. The deeper, and I have to admit, I've only experienced it a couple of times, is, I'm running out of space here. I'm going to write it here. Be aware of awareness. What happens is this feeling of self, when you feel it as see the seer and feel the feeler, there's still the sense of I am within a silence. But then, if you can achieve, which is much more advanced, be aware of awareness, do this, that also disappears. And there's the sense of I becomes very thin and blends. And you are the awareness. Right now, we are intellectual awareness. I'm aware of Miguel, Vance, John, etc., through my what they call samjana in Buddhism, my awareness that perceives contacts in the environment. But through pratyahara, you remove that, and dharana. So when this occurs, you're in dhyana, and then when samadhi, this part of this being, there's like a, have you guys ever seen a picture of a supersonic jet? I've seen it online when it's passing through the sound barrier. You know how they show all that sort of fog and
Sure.
the nose is through it, and then there's another part of the jet. It's the same thing. It's very interesting as I've experienced. There's a barrier.
Mhm.
You pass through it, not sound, but you enter another world. And that's called samprajnata samadhi. And there's about 5 different worlds in the Yoga Sutra and that's called Sabija Samadhi, and there are 5 realms of form. And then you go to Nirbija when there is no form. And a very interesting thing written in the Mahatma letters, Master KH mentions what we consider formless is not formless to them. Their world is a world with form, but to us, it's more finer than a gaseous state, and to us, gas is formless. So that's see the seer, and going a little further. And that is in the Yoga Sutras, the focus. They don't use the term see the seer, feel the feel. That's occult. That comes from somewhere else. But this whole idea, pratyahara, dharana, etc., is pure Yoga Sutras. And achieving pratyahara can take years and years. And then you get a slight indication of dharana. Does anybody have any questions? And if you want me to go further or stop there.
Yeah, what about the other senses? I mean, we have sight for see the seer, and I guess I'm not sure what do you mean by feel? The feeler, is that emotional feeling or,
Ah,
hot and cold pressure type feeling? What kind of feeling does
good
feel the
question.
feeler?
Very good question. So see the seer is not with your eyes. Do you realize you don't need your eyes to see? The eyes are an instrument, but when you go to bed, do you have dreams and you see those dreams? Are you using your eyes?
No, but I always thought of it as a relationship to sight because
Yes,
it's the same, similar experience.
right. It's your inner sight on
Hmm.
the astral plane. You've transferred the external sight to the astral sight. Has anybody here experienced like what's it called, sleep paralysis?
No.
No. You read about that. A lot of people have it and then they realize they can't move their bodies, but yet they're very aware because they've shifted their awareness into the astral body and it's separate from the physical body. So you can't move the physical body, but yet because you don't understand what's happening, you still think you're in the physical body. Same with dreams. So the sight here is the inner sight. When you feel the feeler, it's the inner feeling of your essential nature of your inner being is feeling. It is not the feeling of your regular emotions. In the Gurdjieff terminology, he calls it the higher centers, which he never talks about much. In what would you call it? In Theosophy, it means that you entered into your soul, into the causal body, and you're feeling with your soul. It is not the 5 senses. Thus, in Buddhism, they have the 5 skandhas, which relate to our awareness, feeling, our form, etc. You have to go way beyond it. This is beyond your 5 senses. So this is awakening your inner senses, your inner sight, your so to create a visualization, just to help, to create a picture, say, of the sun. Here, let's use something else because the sun, I don't want to use this example for something. So here. So let's say you have a picture of the Buddha. Pardon my Buddha. Pardon me, Mr. Buddha. Right, he's sitting there.
All
Right.
enlightened. Yeah, yeah. It's easy.
Oh yeah, he has the little top knot. Oh, that is big ears. Okay. So say you have an image of the Buddha in front of you, physical, you have a statue. You look at it and then shut your eyes. You will see it for a few seconds which is called persistence of vision. But then it fades. But then you use your intellect, your personal will to create that image. Then it disappears. You open your eyes, look at the Buddha, shut your eyes, you see it, and then you try and create
Hmm.
that image. This is called and Yogananda used this word. This is Kriya Yoga, using the creative energy. There are, again, these number 1, 2, and 3. There's what's called Icha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, and then Kriya Shakti. Kriya Shakti is the creative energy. Brahma, in the Hindu pantheon, Brahma is that creative force that creates the universe. We all have some degree of Kriya Shakti. By using it with our personal will of our intellect, we can build an image or a visualization of the Buddha, the sun. I ran into one teacher that said you could picture a Coke can if you wanted, which is kind of stupid, but right. If you picture the Buddha, it has an existence as an archetype on the higher planes. A Coke can only has an archetype on the lower mental plane.
No.
Doesn't take you anywhere divine, and that teacher didn't know that. Anyway, so you have to use an archetype that has some divine representation. Buddha, Jesus, if you will, cross, if you will, Vajra, if you want, whatever. So you use your Kriya Shakti and you build, and then you start to gain this inner sight. Right? A lot of people like, you know, you daydream and you're thinking of a
No.
vacation and you're picturing yourself on a cruise. You're touching a little bit of Kriya Shakti, but Kriya Shakti needs Icha Shakti, will. Icha is will, and Jnana is knowledge. So what I'm giving here is the knowledge aspect, but to do it, you have to have your will and creative intelligence. That's Kriya Yoga. But the Kriya Yoga that's given out by the self-realization is much lower than this. But
Mm.
it's not bad. It's not, as you were mentioning, Miguel, it's not a scam.
Hmm. Good to hear.
They, yeah, they have everything. I was at one of their temples in Arizona. It's really nice. In
Mm.
Phoenix, very nice one. Anyway, it's been a long
Wonderful.
time. I don't know if it's still there.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks for sharing this. This has been fascinating and so much more in your book. Yeah, you can close this out. We probably should
Yeah,
wrap it up pretty soon. And do you guys have any questions?
I think the
I have
focus
a
on
quick
the heart
question for
is,
you.
oh,
No,
yeah,
go
I
Go
think
ahead.
the
ahead,
focus
John.
on the heart is what Gospel Thomas was kind of getting at. I know sometimes when you go for a walk in the woods, say, and you put your body to a simple task, it puts it to a side or something, and revelations can come through that way. Is that kind of related to what you're talking about?
yes, in a way. So if that happens, and many people have insights and revelations, which is really nice, that means in the past, some past life, you've already opened some door. And there's something, maybe you lived in the woods in the past, in the mountains, something triggers that memory. And sometimes those revelations are actually repetitive revelations from the past to help spur you to make more effort, to help you in your progress. But it's very true.
Adrian?
Yes, earlier you mentioned past, present, and future being simultaneous, all happening at once. And I was wondering if you believe that through meditation, can we actually change the past?
Yes, we can. So, to give you a visualization, imagine you're on a train traveling from New York to Los Angeles. But now you're in Chicago. I think that's about halfway, or maybe St. Louis. I don't know. So you've left New York, you're in Chicago. New York is the past, Chicago's the present, and LA is the future. That is linear time. But imagine right above Chicago at this moment when you're in Chicago, there's a spacecraft about 300 miles above you. The pilot in that spacecraft can look down. He could probably see New York, Chicago, and LA at that same moment. For
Hmm.
you, what is past is for him present. So
Yeah.
if you take linear time and draw a line perpendicular to linear time, you enter vertical time. And as you move up in vertical time, the relationship between the past, which is still living, present, and future changes. Thus, as your awareness grows in vertical time, you can see more of your past life and how certain events impact on your present life. So I'll tell a little story if we have time.
Sure.
I was really, as a little kid, into model airplanes and had gas-powered model airplanes and stuff. Anyways, I was fixing up one of these motors out in my front lawn and getting it to make it, so don't drive my mother crazy. I was maybe 12, but my finger got in the way of that propeller and didn't cut it off, but it really, I still have the scar here. Really, yeah, Cox Motors, exact 049s, I think they were called back then, something like that. Remember, I sent away from a comic book. Anyways,
This is the glow plug, right? You got to have
yeah,
you had to charge
yeah.
it up.
He
Yeah.
had a battery, and you turn it, and then turn it real. Sometimes so quick you have to get your finger out of the way. I didn't get my finger. I passed out from all the blood. But as I passed out and I fell, I saw a samurai sword coming at me.
Mm.
Much later, because that created a thought in my mind as a little kid. What is that? I didn't know what a samurai sword was, but I remembered the picture. Much later, when I'm in my 20s and I got into martial arts, I used to like watching samurai movies, The Blind Swordsman. Oh, I forgot the name of it, but and several others. Then I realized that in some past life, I got chopped up pretty good. But the memory of that when I saw blood, because it was such a trauma, caused me to pass out. But then recognizing that as then this feeling that would come over me that wants to feel shaky, etc. Then I learned through my meditate overcome it and it disappeared. So I changed my past in a relative sense.
Hmm. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, this has been a great conversation. I've certainly learned a lot, and I certainly suggest to those that get Cyrus's book because there's a
Here it
lot
is
of good
again.
information that will upgrade your spiritual life and at least give you the right spiritual tools and paths that you should take.
Some nice pictures. Actually, one of my paintings of the Master Cage. I don't know if it's that visible there. So
Hmm.
unfortunately, I'm black and white versus
Yeah,
color.
Elvis also liked that master too because of the collar.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate you giving me the time. I did notice that after the show I did with you a year ago, there was a bit of an upsurge in my book sales.
Hmm.
I'm not looking for a lot, but I do like to have something that keeps the publisher happy.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Love supporting your work. Love your ideas. And again, I appreciate your time and coming on the show. And I appreciate everybody being here. So, thanks again. And I hope everybody has a good evening. And don't play with any propeller planes, Vance. Don't get any ideas or buy a Rolls Royce.
And we have
Yeah,
the drones now. So
Yeah, oh, yeah. I
yeah.
forgot. Different
And they're
era.
electric.
yeah,
They didn't
no
have
glow
them back
plugs.
in the the 60s. Or anyways, I want to
Right.
thank you, Miguel, and it was nice meeting everyone.
Thank you. Yes,
Same
thanks
here.
everybody,
Thank
and
you,
have a good
Cyrus.
night. Take
Really
Thanks,
care.
Cyrus.
appreciate
It's
it.
great.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Join the Finding Hermes program for more exclusive content, Gnostic revelations. And happy holidays, Mama.